welcome to the Roadie on the Horn podcast, sponsored again by the hope that Czech West will one day come on this podcast. I'm Donovan, as per usual, and I'm here with my co-host, all-around good guy who loves to play Madden and lives in Iowa, Ryan. Ryan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Donnie. Thank you for the nice words. I do definitely love to play Madden. I played Madden literally this morning.
Does.
Donnie and I have a connected franchise, and I am just joined another connected franchise with one of my other buddies. So there is no shortage of Madden usage. Yeah, Taysom Hill is my quarterback, so definitely not a high-powered passing offense, but we get things done. So yeah, shout out to all the Madden gamers out there.
Yeah, you know, we here love Madden. We have been playing a connected franchise it's been quite some time actually now, which is surprising because usually they die off by the second year when people get mad and start losing. But that's okay. You know, Ryan, we have some news today from you. Some special news that probably maybe a couple people care about. What you got for us, Ryan?
I know we do have big news. Roadie on the Horn. We have news to break from sources is what I'm going to refer to this, but. The USHL, United States Hockey League, the league which I used to work in. I worked for the Cedar Rapids Rough Riders the last 2 years as an intern. Unfortunately, they're not going to be playing this year, but we do have news out of the USHL. The officials' uniforms for the USHL, we have a screenshot of those pre-release. So I know that is such significant news. I know everybody out there was like, man, I just want to know what the USHL linesmen and officials' uniforms look like. So, yeah, if you want to check out our Twitter at Roth Podcast. We'll have it out there for you. So, yeah, take a look. They look pretty sweet. They've got like an extra orange stripe on the top. It's a nice little design. So, yeah, let us know what you think about the USHL officials' uniforms. That's big news from our friends, our sources, our friends of the podcast. So, it's good stuff there. But, yeah, Roadie on the Horn. We're breaking news now. We're a legit news podcast now, Donnie.
Yeah, we went from useless to a little bit less useless in the matter of just hours, and that's just crazy to think about, considering we're just trying to do our thing, But yeah, let's just get into it here. Obviously, the NHL season is now over. Tampa Bay Lightning, congratulations to Lightning fan everywhere. I don't know if I'm surprised or not, but I don't know. Maybe at this point I would call myself surprised, considering I didn't think it would be that easy for them in the long run after seeing how Dallas played the first couple rounds. Obviously, Tampa won in 6. Game 6 was pretty dominant, but I don't know. There's something about the series that doesn't feel like it was a Stanley Cup, honestly, to me. Like, I don't know. Maybe the celebration, not having fans and everything being so strange, really threw me off. But I think that might have been the one thing that really just kind of I don't know, made me feel a little bit less, I don't know, happy that the season was over. It's like you would think that Tampa fans would have liked to celebrate in front of fans, whether they were their fans or somebody else's fans. But obviously a win's a win, and I think in the long run everything was ran very well. And I think we talked about this on the podcast a couple times before, but everything went pretty well. And obviously the Tampa Bay Lightning finally got their ring. You got to see Steven Stamkos with the Stanley Cup, which is just an amazing sight. Ryan, what were your thoughts on just how the series went and how the Stanley Cup ended up?
Definitely see your point with the fact of it being so strange. We have Dallas and Tampa Bay, two southern cities in the United States, playing a Stanley Cup final in Edmonton in September. So, yeah, it was definitely strange. So I definitely see your point on that. But, yeah, to your point, I think it was a little bit easier for Tampa than I expected. I know they were the team that you picked to win the Stanley Cup, so shout out to you, Donnie, for nailing that pick. But, yeah, to the thing and our point of why we like Tampa. I mean, so much depth on that team. It seemed like even when they were getting big injuries to players like Point or Stamkos, they were still able to persevere and get things done. So shout out to John Cooper as well. I really like their roster construction and cap management as well. So really, really good looks there for Tampa. They were kind of a team that was kind of on the cusp the last couple of years. So nice for them to kind of break through there.
Yeah. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. I would assume that they come back in next year as the favorites to win it all again. I can't see anything really happening there to change that necessarily. But yeah, with this season ending, we have the fastest offseason of all time in the NHL. It's historically going to be the speediest, most quick, least days in between the end of the Stanley Cup and the draft and free agency. So that's I don't know, an interesting twinge. It's a little fun. But yeah, we could just hop right into it. Obviously, as a Blackhawks fan, RK, you could have a very interesting offseason. I don't think anybody knows anything that's going to happen here. But if you did have a wish list, what would be a couple things on that list to see that your team could, I don't know, potentially be a part of this offseason?
Yeah, definitely. I know I broke down the Blackhawks a little bit in the past on our podcast, but I'll go through it again right now. So the Blackhawks, unfortunately, do not have a lot of cap flexibility going into this year. Obviously, we've talked about before how the salary cap does not project to increase very much. It's going to stay very stagnant from last year, just given the fact that there was not a significant portion of revenue from the end of the season. So salary cap, unfortunately, will not be helping out the Blackhawks too much. But in terms to answer your question here, a wish list. I think I continue to say this, but the weakness on the Blackhawks is the defense. I really think this is an area that they need to address. I know last offseason going back, they went out, they acquired Olimata and Calvin DeHaan. I thought those were good moves. I do expect both those players to be back again next year, but I still think they need to go out and acquire another top 4 defensemen out there. Adam Boquist is developing. Ian Mitchell should be coming up next year, but albeit it'll probably just be in a third pair role, breaking in from college last year. So there is a little bit of upside for the Blackhawks defense, but I still think it's such a big area of weakness for the Hawks that they need to be proactive and looking to go out and acquire another top 4 defenseman. So that is definitely at the top of my wish list. And then, of course, you got to be looking at the goaltending situation. Corey Crawford, unrestricted free agent, 35 years old. Is there a way that the Blackhawks can bring back Crawford on a cheap deal? Will Crawford want to stay? I think he's definitely going to have offers from other teams across the NHL looking to acquire Crawford. I think he's got a lot of hockey left in him at 35. He has had some injury issues in the past, so I know I was kind of weary on the past of if Crawford will even continue to want to play because of some of the head injuries he's suffered. But I do think Crawford at this point is going to continue to play, and I'm hoping it's with the Blackhawks. But again, to that point, the Blackhawks, they're up against the cap, so they're going to need to be able to negotiate with Crawford at a salary probably at 4-5 million tops. And he was at $6 million last year. So definitely going to need to do some work there with Crawford. But that's kind of my outlook for the Blackhawks. I don't think they're going to do anything significant where they trade away Taves or Kane. I still think those are players that are good to build around. Both of them are signed through 2023. So that's how I see things shaping out for the Blackhawks. Again, really hope they go out and acquire another top 4 defenseman. But albeit given the fact that they don't have a ton of cap flexibility, definitely not going to be an easy task.
Yeah, and I think at this point you can kind of rationalize the fact that they have kind of put themselves in this situation in the first place anyway. So it's not like you can be necessarily mad about it because you have seen so much success over the years. But you are at a crossroads, which is interesting considering a couple years ago, I think most fans would have said you were the team they envy in terms of just where they are. Obviously, Crawford was a little bit younger then. You had Kane and Taves maybe entering their prime at that point. But I think most fans would have been very, very envious of what the Blackhawks had done. And now you look 2, 3, 4 years later, and they're at a point where, I don't know, I don't think anybody really envies the Blackhawks in terms of their situation. It seems like they're like a dearth of talent at this point. Not super, super efficient in terms of depth scoring. Their defense is, as you've said many times, not so good. But yeah, I think the Blackhawks could very well be a playoff team pretty easily next year. It's not like anything would be shocking to me at this point. Again, a lot of defense on the market. So I mean, if they did need to pick up a couple D-men, they could definitely do it.
Yeah, potential is there for sure. But yeah, just going back to your point there, it wasn't that long ago. 2015, the Blackhawks, obviously, they won the Stanley Cup that year. Had such a nice defense, really good top 4 with Seabrook, Keith, Hjalmarsson, and Oduya. Unfortunately, those players have now aged, and they've needed to kind of change things out a little bit. They followed up that Cup win, losing in the first round to St. Louis in 7. That was a really tough series. And then the next year, they were actually the first seed in the Western Conference, and then they got swept by Nashville, and they haven't been back to the playoffs since. So, well, I guess they did last year, but I mean, I don't know. I still don't even really count that. I didn't think they were the 12 seed to get in, and then they kind of lucked out against Edmonton. I'm not really counting them being in the playoffs last year, even though technically they were. But yeah, to your point, I could see them Blackhawks definitely getting back to that potential, but I just think there is still definite work to be done. It's a very good Central Division as well, so you have a high competition. So yeah, gonna be interesting. It wouldn't be a Blackhawks offseason if they didn't go out and acquire a player that they had before. They already did that. They traded back for Brandon Peary. They traded away Dylan Sakura. Thought that was kind of a strange trade. I thought Sakura was a player that the Blackhawks liked and wanted to continue to develop, but that's what Stan Bowman does. He goes out and he acquires players who used to play for the Blackhawks. So we already got that checked off on our Blackhawks offseason bingo card for all of us playing that.
Well, it's better getting that out of the way than going and adding somebody dumb. I don't know, like trading big for Hjalmarsson or something at this point when he's aged a little bit, or I mean, even picking up a random depth player that doesn't involve moving Sakura, involves moving somebody that's a little bit more important. So I think that's probably a positive for you at this point, honestly.
Yeah, could be. It could be Dustin Bufflin. Who knows? We'll see how the Blackhawks shape things out. But There's definitely some Hawks thoughts there for my team. We'll now shift it over, Donnie. Your Rangers, they're picking at the top of this draft. They've already done some moves this offseason. So yeah, go ahead. Share some thoughts on what you would like to see from the Rangers this offseason.
Yeah, I first we'll do a little coverage there of what they did. Obviously, they got rid of Mark Stahl. They gave up a second round pick to get Mark Stahl's contract off the books, which is interesting. Was not necessarily something that I was expecting. I would have expected them to be more or less, I don't know, more cautious with their cap, considering they have so much dead cap as is. And then they decided, hey, we're gonna buy out potentially the greatest Ranger of all time in his last year of his contract, Henrik Lundqvist, obviously. Uh, pretty upsetting at first, but Hank didn't seem too beat up about it. On his post on Twitter, he was very happy for his 15 years with the team, and obviously, I think you have to realize any player makes 15 years with any team. It's storied, it's historic, and I'm sure he can't feel too bad about it, especially because obviously his cap hit was a little bit ridiculous at this point. Very much earned his money all those years, so whatever he is getting paid, he's earned. But yeah, I think it's a very interesting situation for the Rangers, considering it looks like they've cleared that money up to I don't know. Maybe keep D'Angelo and Strome. I'm not necessarily sure if that's the plan. But both of them on RFA contracts, both of them going to need substantial pay raises, which is maybe good, maybe not good. You really never know with both of them, considering neither of them was a real hot commodity until this year. Both of them had career years. Which I guess that seems how it goes when you're on an RFA contract and you're expiring. You need to get your pay, you need to get your money, and it looks like D'Angelo and Strome will both be taking a significant amount. But the one thing that concerns me is I could see the Rangers very well going out and spending up to the cap, just picking up free agents and such, maybe being in on a Petrangelo type player, which would mean essentially they are going to spend up to the cap and be strapped again, which is I don't know. I always like having a little flexibility, and I feel like the Rangers at this point are not a Stanley Cup contender this year unless something terrific happens. I would say down the road maybe, but I have a tough time really understanding what they're doing. Um, I don't know. I can't remember a time when there was a team that had 12 mil in dead cap, especially in the last couple of years. I feel like 12 mil. They're basically working on 80% of the cap or 85% of the cap, which is I don't know, maybe not surprising with the Rangers considering they have made some missteps. Obviously, the Shattenkirk buyout, it looks worse and worse with every Stanley Cup ring that he has acquired here. So I don't know. I feel like the Rangers are really at a crossroads to where they are leaving the rebuild stage and entering the playoff contender stage, but that doesn't necessarily mean to go spend $9 or $10 million on a defenseman that is I think he's 30, maybe 31 right now, and he's gonna want terms, so 6, 7 years. That could be, I don't know, potentially disastrous in the long run.
Yeah, definitely see your point there, especially with the dead cap. Rangers definitely no shyness to buy out players. Obviously, you mentioned Hank and Shattenkirk, Dan Girardi in recent years as well. But yeah, to your point, I think the Rangers are definitely in that spot where they're kind of transitioning, using some of their younger players. They've already been shelling out money the last couple of off seasons. Last year, obviously Jacob Trouba and Artemi Panarin, and then this year at the deadline, they're extending Chris Kreider. So definitely don't want to be overspending, kind of to your point there, Donnie. We see that happen a lot on usually it's July 1st, but at the start of free agency where teams can kind of get a little excited and make some contracts that they later regret because maybe it seems like you have a lot of money now, but then you realize, oh, wow, we're paying Artemi Panarin $11.6 million until 2026 and factor in some of the other contracts as well. So definitely interesting spot there for the Rangers. Obviously helped out by having the number one overall pick in the draft as well.
Yeah, having young talent is really helpful in this situation. That's why they feel like they can go buy out players like Hank and Shattenkirk and trade away Stahl. So they do have 20 million in cap space, even with the 11 mil in dead cap, which is I don't know. I think that's shocking in itself. I don't think we've seen anything like that in a long time. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think the Rangers are at a specific situation to where they have a lot of ELC talent to where they can mask these issues. But what happens when the ELC talent needs to get paid? What happens when they get to that point? They're going to have some real issues if they do decide to spend long term this year, which I think we could definitely see them in on a big free agent. It seems like the Rangers are always rumored to be the team. I don't know maybe the player favorite team. Like everybody always takes pay cuts to go there. It's like Shattenkirk we saw a couple years ago. He was like, I want to go home. I love this team. And then boom, he's fucking sent to Mars. And then Panarin last year takes a pay cut because he really wanted to play in MSG, which is, I guess, respectable. Very, very, I don't know, iconic arena. But I don't know. At this point, I think the Rangers are in a very interesting situation. I would not spend long term if I was them. I would not give a 6, 7, 8 year deal, whatever it may be, um, to anybody, let alone a guy like Petrangelo who is going to command at least 8 or 9 mil, which is scary. But yeah, I don't know. I think the Rangers are in a very, very interesting situation. They've built themselves into a spot where they can afford to make some mistakes here and there. But I would be skeptical if they did spend long term on anybody, especially considering we have seen decline over after 30. It seems like some of these players, especially defensemen, if they have one bad injury or they have one bad season or they start to lose their legs a little bit, everything goes downhill, as you've seen with the Blackhawks and a couple of their very, very quality defensemen kind of losing their luster a little bit after a couple of years after 30.
Yeah, good analysis there on the Rangers. Obviously, Donnie and I have some good insight on the Hawks and Rangers, respectively. So, definitely wanted to make sure we highlight those, as those are the teams we have the most knowledge on and interest in. But definitely want to move on to some other areas in the NHL. And following off of last offseason, there's kind of an interesting rule in the NHL that we saw with relation to offer sheets. We saw that with Sebastian Aho, with the Canadians offer sheeting before the Hurricanes matching. So now that kind of bears the question, is that something we're going to start to see again? Some prime candidates for that include the Islanders' Matthew Barzal or the Blue Jackets' Pierre-Luc Dubois. I think Dominic Kubalik could get some consideration as well, just given the Blackhawks cap situation. Dylan Strome also an RFA for the Blackhawks. But yeah, really interesting with the whole offer sheet thing. It seemed like for a while everybody was shying away from it, and then we saw it last year with Mark Bergevin actually pulling the trigger. So do you think offer sheeting is something that we're going to see again this offseason?
See, if it's going to be anybody, I think it's going to be Barzal. I think there's no I don't know. If you're gonna offer somebody, you go all out. You send it. At this point, Barzal, whatever pick compensation they would be giving up to get him would be quite quite nice. They would not be angered by giving up a first rounder or two first, whatever the compensation would end up being, depending on how much he's being paid. And the Islanders are in a major cap issue here. They have a lot of problems to deal with. Because obviously contracts like Andrew Ladd have not panned out very well for them. And then they're overpaying guys like Komarov and Clutterbuck and Hickey and all this. I don't know. The Islanders are in a very, very weird spot. So I wouldn't be surprised if we did see on the first day of free agency, the first thing we see is Barzal getting a massive offer sheet from a team like Montreal or somebody like that who has cap to work with and has picks to get rid of. I don't know. I think the offer sheet thing, it might have just been a one-off. But if there was going to be anybody, I think Barzal would be the prime candidate. I think in terms of situational, just cap dealings, I guess you could say the Islanders are in such a weird spot. They don't really have that much flexibility. So if somebody did throw an offer sheet at Barzal, they may really have to consider it, even though it would definitely tear them down and make them, I don't know, go into a full rebuild, probably losing what I consider the only real star player on that team.
Yeah, the whole concept of offer sheet is honestly, in my opinion, one of the most bizarre rules in really all of sports. Just because offer sheeting, it was put into the NHL CBA. So here I'm going to go all nerdy again, but it was put into the CBA to give like teams a little bit more access to restricted free agents, but really you'd never see it happen. The fact that it happened last year was such noteworthy news, and really the reason it doesn't happen is I feel like it's because of GM rep. Like GMs don't want to build a bad relationship with another GM because it's almost like a negative thing to offer sheet another team's player. But if you think about another sport, if this was a thing in say baseball or football, you're telling me a team like the New York Yankees wouldn't be like, I don't care, we're going to offer sheet it. We don't care. We're willing to pay draft pick compensation to get a Sebastian Aho or a top tier player. It's just so strange to me that the concept of offer sheeting is almost like, oh my goodness, what are you doing? You're offer sheeting our player, when it's really just competitive advantage. And a team like Montreal was just like, hey, I mean, we'll do it. We want a guy like Sebastian Aho. We want a chance at it, but it's really almost comes down to like GM rep and kind of a respect thing, which is so interesting and not something I really think you would see in other major professional sports.
Yeah, I think it's more of the toddler mentality than anything else. It's like a GM gets mad that their player gets offered. Like, come on, give me a break. especially because long-term GMs, I feel like the GMs that have the most tenure are the GMs that also make the most mistakes and don't do a very good job. It's like, I don't know. I know Lou Lamoriello won Executive of the Year or whatever, but it's like I don't think the Islanders are in a very good spot right now. I don't think he did anything to deserve that other than like traded for Peugeot, nice man, really good job. Um, but if there is a somebody that deserves credit for the success, it's definitely not him. Um, but yeah, I don't know. That's just the whole. I've never really understood it. I mean, I understand not wanting to piss off other GMs, especially if you're young. Like if Kyle Dubas is not going to be offering any offer sheets, he might get his ass kicked. But I don't know. I feel like there is if it's there for you and you have the compensation available, it's like if you're the Senators right now, what's holding you back from throwing out an offer sheet, a 10 mil offer sheet to Barzal or something like that, and then giving up two firsts and a second and a third in the future or whatever? It's like I don't know. The compensation there is not really. I think it's fair. But it's not like it's gonna kill the Senators, especially because they've been gathering all these picks over time, and they could keep gathering picks. It's not like that. That's out of the question. I don't know if we're gonna see one. I think it would be on Barzal. I don't understand anybody really considering an offer sheet on like a smaller type player. Like I don't think anybody's gonna really do that because I don't think there's anybody that's super up against the cap to where they really can't make any moves with players that are worth offer sheeting. I don't know if there's gonna be anybody. I think it would be Barzal. I think it would be about 10.5 mil, just under the 4 first round pick compensation limit. I would assume the Islanders would make space to get rid. They would get rid of all these stupid contracts they have to keep him, but I don't know. At this point, I don't know if you can say one way or another that there's gonna be an offer sheet. I think especially with a shortened offseason, that probably takes away from their whole, ability to have a plan that's efficient at this point. I mean, it's like we have the draft, and 3 days later, free agency opens up. It's like you have no time to do anything.
Yeah, the whole timeline of all this is going to be really interesting. Good comments there on offer sheeting. I definitely think Barzell is definitely the most likely guy, but I expect the Islanders to match. So offer sheeting, I think we could see it happen, but I guess that's kind of a wait and see. It's kind of a yearly NHL offseason interesting thing to follow as it relates to off sheets. So good discussion. I'm glad Donnie wrote that down for our sheet for things to talk about. But we can move on. A few other things related to the NHL offseason. Now that was a discussion on restricted free agents. We can kind of shift over now to some unrestricted free agents. Donnie put down most intriguing free agents. So I'm just going to go over 3 guys that are unrestricted free agents this year, scored over 50 points last year, that being Mike Hoffman, Taylor Hall, Alex Pietrangelo. In my opinion, these are the top 3 skaters, at least when it comes to free agents. But actually, most intriguing free agents for me actually is going to come on the goalie market. I still think it's Braden Holtby. Braden Holtby, obviously, his struggles last year with Washington, well documented. It was not a good year for him, but he's been such a good goalie in the past that I think there is teams that are going to be willing to shell out money for Holtby. I think he's probably the best goalie free agent. There's also Jacob Markstrom and Robin Lehner as well. But really seeing where Braden Holtby lands, that is going to be super interesting for me to follow. So that's where I go for most intriguing unrestricted free agent.
I tend to agree with you, actually. I think it's a very, very, very interesting situation because somebody's going to pay. We know somebody's going to pay. There's teams that need goalies out there that have struggled to get their goalies for how many years now, like the Oilers, for example, if Holtby does decide, hey, he wants to go play in Edmonton. But I'm going to go towards a defenseman that obviously I'm a little biased about, Kevin Shattenkirk. I think his buyout year, nobody really knew what he was going to get. Signed a very, very, very cheap deal with Tampa. I think he was at 1.7. I could see him definitely getting a pay raise and getting a long-term deal again from somebody. It's definitely not going to be the Rangers, sadly enough. But I think Kevin Shattenkirk could have 8, 10, 12 different teams with varying levels of interest on him. It's very hard to find somebody that has the ability to do just about everything. I wouldn't play him on the penalty kill, but he can play power play. He can play basically whatever role defensively, as we saw this year. He filled in so well. Scored crucial goals for them time and time again. Obviously, Stanley Cup winner, or Stanley Cup overtime. I think it was Game 4 winner, maybe Game 3. But I think Kevin Shattenkirk's in an interesting position. He's obviously healed up from the injury that held him back when he was in New York. I would expect him to get a big pay raise somewhere. It's not going to be Tampa, I don't think. But somebody will shell out money for a guy like Shattenkirk, who has proved time and time again that he is a player that can bounce back and provide like 40, 50, maybe even 60 points on the right team.
Yeah, I think Shattenkirk specifically is a really good example of the dangers of the free agency market. If you look back a few years ago when Shattenkirk, he was on the Blues. They traded him away when he was a pending free agent to Washington when they're going all in for a cup run. Didn't end up happening, but then he signs a fat deal with the Rangers that, looking back, they probably overpaid a little bit. Ended up having to buy him out. And then he goes to Tampa and signs on such a cheap deal. So I think the timing of when you get free agents is so important. I know Donnie noted on our notes before this about how it's so dangerous to give guys deals when they're on the wrong side of 30. And you want to make sure you're considering what are we getting for the player in the years that they will be playing for our team rather than what they've done in the past. So another tie-in here for that is kind of, I'm interested in looking at some guys who maybe underperformed a little bit last year but have been good players in the past. I know I mentioned Holtby, but another player I'm thinking of here is Tyson Berry. Traded last offseason for Nazem Kadri from Colorado to Toronto. Was a little bit underwhelming at the start of the year. Toronto fans kind of got on him a little bit. He finished the year with 39 points in 70 games. He's still just 28 years old, right-hand shot. Toronto's a team that does not have a ton of cap flexibility. They paid so much to their forwards. I think Tyson Berry could kind of be an under-the-radar free agent that a team could get at a little bit less than market value, especially given the fact that the salary cap's not going to go up a ton and there's a shortage of teams with a ton of cap flexibility.
I absolutely agree. Getting to watch him in Colorado was exciting because he is an electric player when he is playing up to his fullest of ability. I got to see him skate up the boards, go coast to coast, skate up the boards, and nip top shelf with a goalie hugging the post to tie up a game late in the third while they were making their playoff run the first time. And it was, I don't know, it was amazing to see a guy with that type of talent be considered. I just don't think defensemen have that type of, I don't know, skill set. Obviously, defensively, not the best player. Really, just we've established that he is a very mediocre defenseman at this point. Toronto really did, I don't know, did bits to really ruin him as a defensive player. I think Babcock really did not enjoy um, making him a usage player, which is interesting considering they paid a good amount. Kadri ended up being fantastic in Colorado. Um, but I could definitely see Barry, somebody spending big on Barry. Again, another guy that can run your power play. Um, very, very, very talented offensively, has a lot of speed. Defensively, not going to be the best player ever, but there's guys like that. Very, very few. I'd say like maybe a dozen guys that can put up the same offensive performance that Barry can when he's on his game. And again, there's a lot of buy low type players in free agency, but I think Barry is a great example of a guy that you can get on a steal. And if you just look back to how he was coaching Colorado and use him in the same role, you could be absolutely reaping the benefits. He could be a 60, 65 point player pretty easily on the defensive end, which is surprising considering we don't get that very often.
Yeah, I really like Barry. Glad to hear you reinforce that. Obviously, you have a little bit of Avs insight living in Colorado. So good to hear that with Barry. And then I'm going to give you one more guy that I think could be a little bit more under the radar. This would be a forward. I'm going to go with Mikael Granlund from Nashville. Last year, coming off a year where it was definitely not his best, only 30 points in 63 games. He was just traded over from Minnesota for Kevin Fiala. Minnesota's obviously thrilled with how Kevin Fiala turned out last year, but I still think there's a ton of talent with Mikael Granlund. I've seen him play live a few times, both with Nashville and Minnesota, and he's always been a player that stood out for me as just having a ton of skill. I feel like a landing spot for Granlund where he's going to, say, a team that's a current playoff team, and you can throw him on a wing with a good center. Not sure who necessarily that is, but I think there's a lot of potential for Mikael Granlund to be another player who could kind of be a little bit under the radar and a little undervalued right now, but be a player that in a few years they're looking, wow, how did we get Mikael Granlund for such a cheap contract?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think my last two picks would have to be goaltenders, and I'm going to start with Anton Dobin. We have talked down on him, but he put up a big performance to get the Stars to the Stanley Cup. You have to give him credit, and at 34, what's going to happen? Like, you really don't know. Is he going to get a starter role somewhere as a team like the Edmonton or Calgary, cesspool of goaltending, going to spend money to get him in there, considering he's proven that he can be a number one goalie through a stretch. I mean, it's obviously in Dallas. He had some help defensively with a great core, but he made some big saves, and he was really the rock to get them to the Stanley Cup. Another player, obviously, somebody we talked about a little bit ago, Henrik Lundqvist. I don't know where Hank's going to go. I have no idea at this point. I don't know what role Hank's going to get. I don't think anybody has any clue. I think everything really happened very quickly, and I'm sure Hank is still maybe not sure exactly what he's doing, but it looks like he still wants to play. And is there a team that's going to be willing to give him a starter role? Is there going to be a team that's going to be willing to give him 50 games in a season? I think he has proven time and time again that he has the ability to do it still. Obviously, behind the Rangers' mediocre D line really didn't help. But I don't know. I think two aging goaltenders are real intriguing candidates to get. I don't know. Could be very, very high impact players for maybe not the highest of contracts, which would be I don't know. I could see Hank going to any contender that really needs a second goalie, maybe a Colorado-esque team, and that would be maybe a fantastic fit for him. I don't know. I don't think anybody has really any idea where either Hudobin or Lundqvist are going to go, considering it seems like Holtby is the clear number one on the market, especially if Leonard does not re-sign with Vegas, as we haven't seen really what he's doing yet, because nothing has been confirmed or denied yet. Obviously, there was a rumor a couple weeks ago, but nobody really knows what's happening there.
Yeah, goalie market always so difficult to predict. It seems like there's a goalie carousel seemingly every year, as there is. The goalies move around, but so hard to predict that carousel. What teams like what player? Who do they project to be good? So that'll be interesting to follow, especially with Hank, obviously a big name there. But I want to finish up here. We'll highlight a few of the top free agents overall and just give some predictions or where we see them being good fits. I want to start with Taylor Hall. I think this is a player, obviously, won the Hart Trophy just a few years ago. So him reaching the unrestricted free agent market, that's a big deal. Any thoughts for you, Donnie, on where you can see Taylor Hall landing up?
See, I think Taylor Hall is probably sick of losing. It's got to be at this point. He has not had a playoff run in his career yet. I have two teams that I think could, if they had the cap space and had the flexibility, just absolutely run with him. The first team would be the Edmonton Oilers. Obviously, I don't know necessarily if that's a potential spot for him. I don't know what their cap situation is going to be like after they make some moves, because they are going to need to make some moves. But it seemed like Hall kind of missed home. And obviously going back home with, you get to play with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, you can't really complain. I think Taylor Hall could end up being one of the best players in hockey next to Connor McDavid. It's like we've seen him do a lot more with a lot less. Obviously in New Jersey, he was the Hart Trophy winner with mediocre line mates at best. So I could definitely see him ending up there, or a team that has supreme cap flexibility right now, Colorado. I could definitely see the Abs. This would be the first real, we want to win now, we need to win now, we are looking towards the future, but also really, really, really need to get our shit together and add one more talented depth player, offensive scorer. I don't know. Colorado would be a fantastic fit for him. Getting him to play on the power play alongside McKinnon and Rantanen, Landeskog, Cale Makar, all these players would be a treat. I could definitely see it happening. I'm not necessarily sure if they are going to be spending, considering they will have to pay some guys like Cale Makar coming up shortly here. But I don't know. I think Taylor Hall to Colorado as a dark horse candidate at this point, because, I mean, it's been rumored in the past, especially during the trade market. I don't think anybody thought that he was going to sign there long term. And if Colorado could get him long term, they could definitely be a cup contender for the entirety of his contract.
Yeah, I really like your commentary there with Hall of him wanting to go to a winning team. Obviously, he was with Edmonton for a lot of bad teams. He was with the Devils for some bad teams. Actually got him to the playoffs the year he won the Hart Trophy, and then he went to Arizona. They didn't have too great of a showing in the restart. But team for me that I'm kind of feeling with Taylor Hall is actually the Boston Bruins. I know you were talking about teams that are good, so that's kind of where I got the thought for the Bruins. Bruins have a little bit more cap flexibility than you maybe thought. Going into this year is Zdeno Chara, pending free agent, so they get rid of his contract. Only one more year of Tuukka Rask and Jaroslav Halak combined at $9.2 million. So I think the Bruins actually have a little bit more flexibility to get a player like Hall. I feel like I heard some rumors about Bruins being a potential team to trade for Hall last year. Obviously, he ended up going to Arizona. So I could see Boston being a potential landing spot for Taylor Hall. I think he would fit in really well with how Boston kind of runs things down there.
That would be great. Like, think about it. Boston's always been I know they've always had depth, but the first line is always the line that everybody talks about. Nobody really talks about the guys that are on the second and third line. Imagine throwing Taylor Hall out there with Nebraska and just telling them, hey, have your fun, do your thing, call it a day. That would give them probably the strongest top six in hockey. And, I mean, Boston is always there. Whether you want to admit it or not, Boston is always right in the forefront of contention, and they will continue to be that way until their guys start to age and decline. I don't know. I didn't think about it, but I could definitely see it, especially with you mentioning the cap. Obviously, they're not going to keep Torrey Krug probably, so that opens up a significant amount of space for them to be flexible with. Man, think about Boston with Taylor Hall. That would be something, really.
Yeah, I would like that fit a lot. I feel like I could see that. I think Boston will definitely be a player for Taylor Hall. So I like that. Just want to touch on the last little bit. A few defensemen here, potential landing spots for him. Obviously, Alex Pietrangelo, I mentioned him as one of the top in this class. You also have Torrey Krug, Tyson Berry, Kevin Shattenkirk, Eric Gustafsson, Sammy Vatanen, Chris Tanev, just to name a couple. All those guys had at least 20 points last year, so expect all those guys to be players. I'm just going to highlight one team that I think is going to be a player for at least a couple of those guys, and that's the LA Kings. Kings are another team with a lot of flexibility. I think they are kind of on the up. I really like the Kings prospect pool. I think spending now in free agency is a good spot for the Kings to be looking to add back some more defensemen.
I think that's fair, and I'll add on one more team. I think the Winnipeg Jets are going to have to do something about their defensive core if they want to win. They finally have a little bit of flexibility. Obviously, they have a ton of pending free agents here, but nobody that is super, super important. And I think we could definitely see a Patrick Laine trade coming on the horizon. It seems like this has been rumored for how many years now. It has to happen at one point. So if they did open up space with Laine, get prospects, get picks, that could potentially open up the cap to spend on one of those big defensemen like a Pietrangelo or a Krug. I don't know if I can necessarily see it happening with a quick offseason. If they had more time, I think it would be a little bit easier for them to flex with. But at this point, I think Winnipeg's real issue, I would say they're probably two really good defensemen away from being a Stanley Cup contender. It's like they have the best goaltender, one of the best goaltenders in the league, and their forwards are all very, very talented. They seem to get depth scoring out of random idiots all the time. No offense, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like Winnipeg is just a couple defensemen away from being a really, really, really dangerous team, especially in a conference that is not necessarily churning out the same team every year.
Yeah, definitely. Winnipeg was another team that caught my eye on this as well. I think they're going to be a definite player for Alex Pietrangelo. Obviously, Pietrangelo has played in that division for so long, so Winnipeg's definitely seen plenty of Pietrangelo. So I definitely like that commentary there. So that kind of sums up our recap for the NHL offseason. We're so looking forward to it. As Donnie said, it's going to be rapid fire, so I'm sure a lot of moves have already happened by the time you're listening to this. So definitely let us know on your thoughts on that. But we can shift over. Few of our listener questions this week. A lot of them relate, continuing on with the hockey theme. So we'll get into that here. We'll start. First question from our friend Steve at AndersIEE on Twitter. Here he says, which NHL team is under the most pressure this offseason? Donnie, I'll let you go first.
That's tough. I don't know. If I was going to pick one team, I think it might be the Islanders, honestly. Obviously, going back to Steve's favorite team here. I think the Islanders are at a point where they have proven they're a playoff team. They've proven that they're good enough to make it, but they haven't proven that they're good enough to make a deep run. I think that's the big issue with them is they don't have the talent level just yet, and they also have kind of screwed themselves with their cap situation. I don't know. I think there's immense pressure, especially if Barzal gets an offer sheet. Their cap situation will be so interesting to watch, considering, I mean, it's like they've paid guys like Komarov and Clutterbuck, as I've said before, way too much money for way too much term. Andrew Ladd is still there just kicking. I don't know what they're going to do with him. I would expect a buyout, but what do I know? I feel like the Islanders are in an interesting situation to where they are in this almost middling playoff team stage. It's like, they're going to make a decent run. They might win a playoff series here and there, but they need to get further than that. Obviously, I saw some Islanders fans saying that their series in the second round was the biggest series they've been in 30 years, which is not ideal, especially if you're an Islanders team that is building a brand new arena, and they're preparing for what should be entrance into their playoff contention prime here. I'd say they should have 3 or 4 years if they do it correctly. I think there's a lot of pressure on them and a lot of pressure on Lou to really just do a good job. And I don't know necessarily if you can get that out of the Islanders and out of Lou right now. I think they have so many interesting situations, and I think their fans are very, very restless on them adding another talent. Obviously, adding Pajot was a good idea, and it has helped them. You could tell that he was a real firecracker in their series and in their run towards the playoffs. But they need to do more, and I don't know if the Islanders have the capability to do more with their current cap situation, at least.
Yeah, I really agree with you on the Islanders being an interesting spot. Obviously, we highlighted Matt Barzal. Gonna need to pay him a lot of money, and the Islanders have already paid so many players so much money for long term. I'll name a few here. Anders Lee, Brock Nelson, Jordan Eberle, Andrew Ladd, Josh Bailey, J.G. Pajot, Johnny Boychuk, Nick Leddy, and Simeon Varlamov. Every player I just said there signed for over $5 million and through at least 2022. So I think the Islanders are definitely a prime team that could be looking to make some trades. I think when I look at that, a few players I think they should be looking to trade this offseason. For me, it starts with Josh Bailey. I thought Josh Bailey was really, really good in the playoffs, but I think it's important for the Islanders to look to cash out on Bailey's value now. He signed at $5 million and through 2024, and he's already 31 years old. He has no restrictions on his contract related to trade. I think Bailey would be a great candidate for the Islanders to look to move this offseason.
Yeah, I don't think it'll happen. I think that the Islanders, I don't know, they value tenure more than anybody else. And Josh Bailey is like the only player on that team that has been there for like a decade. It feels like Josh Bailey has been the only consistent on the Islanders. But if they did move him, they could get a haul, honestly, especially seeing how the trade market has been and getting a guy with a couple years on his contract. They could definitely help themselves out and then open up the cap space to maybe go get a better player on a similar deal. I don't know. The Islanders have paid a lot of players a lot of money and too much money. And let's say they did trade Bailey and then they bought out Ladd. That would open up cap for them to go make a move on and getting some more depth, getting some better offensive talent. I've also seen a lot of people say that they need to move one of Boychuk or Letty. Interesting. I don't know how much the defensive players really matter in their system, considering it looks like their defense is always good, regardless of who they throw out there. They could throw out any idiot and they'd be fine. Barry Trott's just a fantastic coach. But I definitely agree with you on the Josh Bailey move. It's like, as a Rangers fan, Josh Bailey is a consistent pest and he's always producing, so that may hurt them a little bit. But what if you end up with like a Taylor Hall-esque player? Are you like mad about that? I think they'd forget about Bailey very quickly when they saw Taylor Hall out there with Matt Barzal. Just think about it. Like the speed on that line would be just ridiculous.
Yeah, definitely in agreement on that. I thought you made a good note. Lou Lamoriello, he does not like making trades. He's one of the GMs that, as you said, they like to kind of grow things their own. So maybe that's kind of just my analysis there on what I would do for the Islanders. But yeah, to your point, I think they definitely need to be doing at least a little bit to clear cap. You mentioned Barzell and then Anthony Beauvillier, another player who expires after next year. So he's going to be a player they're going to need to pay as well. So it really interesting conversation with the Islanders. I really thought that was a good answer for you, Donnie, on that most pressure this offseason. For me, though, most pressure this offseason, it stays in the Metro Division, but for me, it's the Pittsburgh Penguins. We talked about the Penguins a little bit ago as a team that is kind of going all in now. They traded their first-round pick to get Kasperi Kapanen. They don't have a second-round pick this year either. That was going back to the Marc-Andre Fleury expansion draft, so that's kind of interesting. No first-round pick for them in 2021 as well. So the Penguins are all in this offseason. I think they're going to be a team that's going to be looking to make moves. They already have. They traded for Michael Matheson from Florida on the defense, so Penguins really in an interesting spot. Their goaltending situation also interesting. Matt Murray and Tristan Jarry both restricted free agents. So I'm definitely looking at the Penguins as a team that should be looking to continue to add. Obviously, as I mentioned, they're going all in. And then I'll just throw in one other team here I think is in an interesting spot. Vegas. Vegas, obviously, they are a team that's been a regular in the playoffs since they've come up as an organization, so respect to them. I think they've done a nice job, but they are in an interesting spot, obviously, after losing in the conference final last year. They traded for Robin Lehner at the trade deadline. He's an unrestricted free agent, and they're still paying Marc-Andre Fleury, so you wonder how they're going to handle that goaltending situation. And as well, they have one more year of Paul Stastny, so I'm interested to see how Vegas handles things, but that's kind of a few teams there that I would like to highlight just before we go into off-season mode here.
I definitely agree, especially on the Penguins. We've talked about this time and time again on extending the window or extending your contention time or whatever. And the Penguins have been trying to do this for the last couple of years. It hasn't worked. They haven't been that successful in their extension of their window. And again, they are further along than just about any team in terms of, their veterans are veterans. Malkin and Crosby are not getting younger. Letang is not getting younger. Um, I don't. They're in such a weird position. I've seen a lot of Penguins fans. As I went to high school in Pittsburgh, if nobody knows that, and I have a lot of Penguin fans friends that were very very upset about losing Hornqvist. That is a guy that is a heart and soul player, a guy that you're. I don't know. He's been there for so long, and he's done so much, and he's such a clutch player that it seems like people were very upset about that. But that's the reality of trying to extend your window over and over. It's like you have guys that cannot stay healthy. They would need a miracle for a Crosby, Malkin, Letang season to all play 80 plus games. It just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. And even if they did, they have so much work to do and so much mediocrity on that roster that just it seems like they fill in any stupid ELC player every year and just tell them, hey, go out there, do your best. I mean, but it's like every year, it's like you get a new Sam Lafferty or you get a new Dominic Simone. It's like we saw it obviously with Connor Sheary.
Jake Gensel as well for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, they produce a lot, but you need consistency. Obviously, we've seen Gensel actually turn into a great player, which is huge for them. But the others really just kind of there. And I mean, as we talked about many times, teams with depth win. Teams with depth are the one that's end up going deep. Like look at Tampa. Tampa plugs in all these high level prospects and somebody gets hurt, and nothing happens. Like they lose Braden Point. Oh, they win to the Stanley Cup. It's like Stamkos plays one period in the Stanley Cup. Oh, they still win. They're fine. Like no biggie. I don't know. They're a very interesting situation. They've been an interesting situation for all these years, and I don't feel like they've done much to really address it. And now they're at a breaking point where they have to get rid of some of their vets, and the fan base might not be happy, and then the team production might not be as good as you'd hope it would be.
Yeah, going to be interesting to follow things there for the Pens. As I said, they're very aggressive. They're their general manager, Jim Rutherford, which I do respect.
The
So,
most aggressive,
yeah,
maybe.
that is for sure. So, interesting topic there. Really good question for Steve. Break down a few teams there. Get some Isles thoughts for you as well. Appreciate that. Now we'll move on to our friend Scotty G. Of course, you know Scotty G always be asking us questions, so we love it here. He wants to start reflecting on the Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning. He says, "Who in the Lightning are you most happy for winning the Cup?" For me, easy answer here. It's got to be Steven Stamkos. This guy has been through so much when it comes to injuries or just misfortune with whatever the situation is. So obviously the captain of the Lightning as well. So really happy for Stamkos to see him get his Cup there for Tampa.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But if I had to pick somebody that wasn't, I think it would be Ryan McDonough. Ryan McDonough has played so many playoff games in his career. I don't think people recognize how many games he had played. They made multiple conference finals runs when he was on the Rangers, a Stanley Cup run without him getting it, and then obviously his struggles in Tampa with them getting sent out much earlier than we thought. Um, I think it was a matter of time for Tampa to win. But it's really nice to see guys like Stamkos, like McDonough, really finally get theirs. It's like even Shattenkirk, you can give him credit. I saw a lot of people giving Shattenkirk shit because he was on the team a year before they won the Stanley Cup twice in a row, obviously with Washington and then St. Louis. It's a little bit of an issue, and you can't really blame one guy for that. But you have to feel bad for a guy like Shattenkirk until now. He's finally got his. It doesn't matter anymore. And I mean, obviously, the path getting there was not necessarily ideal, but credit to these guys for sticking around. It's a team full of good veterans, like nice guys that you can't really hate. It's like I don't know how anybody in the league can hate Steven Stamkos. He's just a guy that goes out there, plays really well, very very efficient player, and he's an enigma. He's a very very talented guy that it seems like can never really stay healthy, and it's nice to see him get his. Even though I've seen people say that his cup doesn't count because he didn't play in the playoffs. Like okay, come on guys, like he has played so many games without having a chance. Like give him some credit. Like stop making it so I don't know, people are so negative about things like that. Just like let Stamkos have his. Like he has earned it. If anybody's earned it, it's him.
Yeah, definitely. Really happy for Stamkos on that one. Also say Tyler Johnson and Andre Palat as well. They've been guys that have been with Tampa now for a number of playoff runs. So good for those guys. And Jan Rudolph, only former Blackhawk. Donnie got in McDonough, and he's talked about Shattenkirk. So former Blackhawk Jan Rudolph got his championship as well. So shout out to him. So love that idea there. Good for Tampa, as we said. Just seemed like it was only a matter of time for them to break through. So good question there from Scott. Next one he's got for us. Thoughts on Oliver Ekman-Larsson, some of the trade talks around him, and what Arizona's plan may be. So, yeah, it seems like Oliver Ekman-Larsson is in trade rumors every year, no matter the situation. He already signed his contract extension with Arizona, but yet again, he's experiencing trade rumors. So, his contract, definitely not a cheap one, signed at $8.25 million all the way through 2027. 29 years old for OEL, but yeah, I mean, the trade rumors keep coming up for OEL. I think team would have to pay a lot for him, but any thoughts on that related to OEL and Arizona, Donnie?
I think OEL, if OEL goes, everybody else goes. I think Arizona would go straight into a rebuild if they got rid of OEL because I don't think they're going to get back the needed talent to where they can stay successful. Obviously, Arizona is in a really, really weird spot. Obviously, they're going to be losing Taylor Hall. It looks like Chaika's gone, which is still just the most unexplained, stupid just move of the offseason because it seemed like they had finally got somewhere. They were finally really making the steps to get to where they were a competitive every year playoff team. And now, hearing OEL rumors, maybe it gives some legs to it, considering the GM is new, and I I feel like Arizona's got to stick with something. It seems like they've been up and down. Every once in a while they'll make the playoffs. People are like, oh, Arizona, great season. What are they going to do next year? And then they end up getting 65 points and they're a top 5 pick again. Um, I don't know. You have to think that Arizona's going to want to hold on to OEL. That's the one guy that like you can really cheer for. It's like in terms of Coyotes that have been there with tenure, like the guys that are like considered your franchise cornerstones, he's it. I think he's really it. Like, Clayton Keller, good player, but he's not on OEL's level in terms of forwards and defensemen and all that. And then, obviously we've seen guys like Phil Kessel kind of go to Arizona to retire, basically. It's like they haven't really done much. He hasn't really done much. I don't know. I feel like if they did get rid of OEL, that would mean they're basically tearing it down and going for a big rebuild, which would probably upset Arizona fans. And then, we'll have bad attendance and then they'll be rumored to move again. And I don't know. We could definitely see them. I don't know if this is a tear down year for anybody. I feel like it's the hardest year to tear down if you are looking to do that. But if Arizona's got to do something, they got to make a move to either to contend or just get rid of it and just start over, give it 3-4 years in a rebuild, and hope your prospects pan out.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think for Arizona to move him, they would need a really big haul back. OEL has just been such a consistent player. I looked up some of his stats. He's played at least 23 minutes average ice time per season every year since he was 21 back in 12-13. So been such a consistent player. Played at least 75 games every single season since he was 20 back in 11-12, except for either a lock-on shortened year or this year, which was shortened because of COVID, obviously. But he played all those games after that, so he's an incredibly durable player. And I think if he was saved almost from Arizona and went to a really good team, that would be such a great ad. So I think it would be great for another team to go out and acquire OEL. I think that would be such a great ad, even given the fact that his cap hit may be a little high, but you have a lot of certainty with term on OEL. So interesting to hear his name come up. Again, as we said, Arizona, I think they would need a ton of value back, but interesting thoughts there as it relates to OEL. Again, one of the top defensive players that could be on the move this offseason. So good thought there from Scott. So that kind of does it for hockey thoughts for this podcast. A bunch of them there. So hope you enjoyed that. Let us know some of your thoughts on that. Scott's got a few other questions around sports world. This one relates to his school, the Oklahoma Sooners here. He says, break down the Sooner shit show that happened on last Saturday. So unfortunately, Scotty G, he asked us a question last week about how Spencer Rattler went off against Missouri State, and then OU follows it up with a loss at home to Kansas State, losing 38-35 in Norman. In that one, OU was shut out in the fourth quarter of that game, so their offense was really cooking early and then kind of fell apart late. So that was kind of tough, but yeah, OU losing a game early in the year and back-to-back years losing to K-State. That was an interesting game that we witnessed last weekend.
Yeah, I think it is just truly on him for jinxing the team. I think he has let himself down and let his friends down that are OU fans. You know, Rattler did not have the best game. I think let's be real here. You can't be throwing multiple picks, especially against the K-State defense. It's not been good. It's a very K-State as a program has not been good. They're kind of just there. Like that is a team that you are there to beat up on, and maybe you'll go up 1 or 2 in the rankings. But man, that kind of hurts. Honestly, if you're an OU fan, you had all this confidence. Like Scotty was probably talking, oh, he's winning the Heisman, and then boom, he pulls that shit, and then now it's like, I don't know, what are they gonna do? Are they gonna even be able to compete with a guy like that, especially if he's making mistakes like that? Like, I'm pretty sure they got outscored by 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, something like that, which is that can't happen against anybody, let alone K-State. It's not a team that's really overwhelmingly good at anything. I don't know. I feel bad necessarily. I mean, OU fans seem like they've gone through a lot. They've always had so much talent, but it's like they never end up really winning the big thing, and it doesn't look like this year is going to be the year either.
Yeah, they run the Big 12 every year, and then they get to the college football playoff and run into somebody in the SEC, and things come up short. But I thought Rattler had some positive play in that game, just going back to that thought here. But yeah, fourth quarter, he was not good, did not have the juice. And also, Lincoln Riley, he punted the ball in that game, down a touchdown score, and there was 3 minutes left, and OU had 1 timeout, and they were punted. They punted the ball. Like, you don't deserve to win the game if you're making that decision. You got to go for it in that spot.
It's very true.
Trust your offense in that spot. So OU coming up a little bit short there. Definitely still have a shot to get to the playoff. I think they're better than Texas. Texas is always so overrated. So not out of the water yet. OU, they lost to K-State last year too, and still made it all the way to the college football playoff. So not officially out, but yeah, definitely not what OU wanted, especially a home game in Norman. So interesting thought there about the Sooners. We'll continue to follow them as Scotty G continues to ask about them. We love it. Nice to have college football back. We'll have Big Ten football coming up shortly as well. My Donnie's team, the U, has looked really good so far. So yeah, that's been fun to follow in college football. So we'll continue on though. Few questions here from Scott now about the NFL. Here he says, thoughts on Big Dick Nick's performance and what this means for kissing titties Trubisky. So Bears thoughts here. I forgot about the Mr. Trubisky tweeting that he loves kissing titties, so I'm glad Scott brought that back here. But yeah, to Scott's point, the Bears, they're 3-0. They've looked solid so far. Nick Foles came in relief in their last game against Atlanta. Through 16 of 29 for 188 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. So pretty solid. Not a big surprise for me. I did definitely expect that both Foles and Trubisky were going to be seeing action this year. So good for the Bears. They're at least getting wins despite some of their quarterback play that has been inconsistent. But yeah, good for Nick Foles. Obviously a player that I always root for, just given his ties to Philly. So that was good to see Nick Foles have a nice performance.
I'm not necessarily sold on the Bears. It's nice to see Nick Foles out there doing his thing. It's like we've seen him in starting positions before and not go so well, and then we've seen him in relief positions be maybe the best quarterback of all time off the bench. I don't know how it happens. He just comes in cold and he decides to take over. Um, Trubisky stinks. Let's just leave it at that. I don't know. Nick Foles is probably better than him. It's not by much, but Trubisky stinks, and I know BK is gonna hear this and be very upset, but Trubisky stinks. Just get over it. Change your Avi. Call it a day here.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit more optimistic on Trubisky than you are, but yeah, to your point, it's not like Mr. Trubisky is a player that you're like, yeah, I want this guy as my starting quarterback, but I think he occasionally will show you
They
some
took
things.
him over Mahomes.
Yeah, okay. The Mahomes, I think they actually, now that you brought that up, I think the bigger issue is that they took him over Deshaun Watson because nobody knew that Patrick Mahomes was going to be Patrick
Also
Mahomes.
true.
But
Also
you
true.
definitely, I think we had an idea about Deshaun Watson. He literally had the most unbelievable performances in national championship games back to back, and they traded up for Trubisky, so that was interesting. I think Trubisky shows you a little bit. He's still really young, but yeah, his play has definitely been too inconsistent for the Bears Vikings. That's why they went out and got Foles. So nice for them there. And then, yeah, to your point, I'm not definitely sold on the Bears either. I think Green Bay has definitely looked a lot better than them in that division. So that'll be interesting to follow. And the Packers always own the Bears. As a friend of many Bears fans, I definitely can attest to that Aaron Rodgers owns the Bears. So that's kind of a wake me up for when that happens. But yeah, decent start for the Bears there. Then another thought on the Bears here from Scott. Says the Bears have more wins than the entire NFC East. And he says, what does this mean? Well, I mean, Donnie and I, our two favorite teams, they come from the NFC East. This is probably why this question happened. We know how bad the NFC East is, Donnie and I. The Eagles and Giants have just been an absolute disaster so far this year. So, yeah, it's been really bad. The Bears having more wins than the entire division, I mean, it's been through 3 games, but definitely an interesting fact on that. And a reminder of how bad the Eagles and Giants are for us, Donnie.
Yeah, you don't have to tell me. I've been moping, mostly quietly, but I've been moping. Last night, the funniest thing is after the Jets game, they came up with the stats on who is projected to get the number 1 pick percentage-wise, and the Giants have a 29%, and the Jets have a 28%. So that goes to sum up, if the Giants are worse than the Jets, and the Jets look like absolute ass against the backup quarterback. I mean, it's like they had some positive things happen to them, like Sam Darnold, he had a nice run there.
Yeah, that was a really nice run, actually. That stunned me, that Sam Darnold run on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah. I think this is going to be the worst year of Giants football ever. Like, ever. Like, I could see them maybe not winning a game. Losing Saquon has taken all of the desire to watch them out of me, and then now Jabril Peppers is hurt. He's not playing this week, so that's another slap in the face. It's like they're going to be throwing out so many stupid idiots. It's just at this point, I'm just waiting for the offseason when they fire Gettleman and then Judge gets fired. Maybe not his fault. Can't really blame him for such a shitty team. But, it's the Giants are a cesspool of fuckery. Absolutely awful. And you don't have to tell me. Like, rub it in my face if you want. But I if you look back, I said the 7 or 8 wins was their ceiling. And that would have been them, like, outperforming the fuck out of it. Like, that would have been having, like, all pro corners. And, we're at a point where it's like this season is a mess. Call it a day. I'll go 0-16, draft a quarterback, do something. I don't know. Just fire me up a little bit here.
Yeah, it's bad, and you definitely don't need to remind me on the Eagles either. I just need to look at their wide receiver situation, and it's just abysmal. So there you go. There's thoughts on that. There we appreciate those NFL thoughts there from Scott. He's got a baseball thought for us next. He says, funny thought here. He says, thoughts on a Marlins Athletics World Series. So, I mean, these aren't teams that necessarily I think are going to get the World Series. They definitely are teams that have been good. I mean, A's, I think, have a better shot than the Marlins do. I'm kind of going to side here with Donnie. I know he's thinking that the Dodgers, they're looking good. They had a nice win over the Brewers in their first round. So, I think Dodgers are going to get there out of the NL. So, don't think the Marlins are getting there. A's, you never know. I think the AL is a little bit more open. That Rays-Yankees series, Donnie and I were talking about that a little bit before we started recording. That one should be really interesting as well. A's and Astros on the other side of that bracket. So, I mean, thoughts on a Marlins-A's World Series, Donnie? I don't think you're picking that, but if you want to share who you are picking for the World Series right now, go ahead for that.
I said last week that I was very, very skeptical the Marlins would win a game, and then they won the series, so that goes to show the Cubs kind of stink. Sorry, I apologize.
Hey, I'm aware. Believe me, I know.
Yeah, I apologize for that one. I'm thinking the Marlins probably don't have the firepower to do it. If the Marlins won the World Series this year, it would be the true definition of a COVID season, and I wouldn't give them any credit for it.
Yeah, that's the Marlins though. No playoff losses for them in the history of the Marlins. The 2 times they made the playoffs, they won it all in '97 and '03. So you never know, but you probably know.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's like maybe I could see the A's. The A's have a good roster. Obviously, they have some injuries right now, and the pitching is suspect. But I mean, at least the AL is a little more wide open right now. It's like we could definitely see the Rays beat the Yankees, and then I could definitely see the A's win, and then or like A's Rays would be such a just a strange. Like how does that even happen? How's that? How did we let this occur? Like the chances are whatever teams are gonna play if the Yankees don't make it will have a lower payroll than the Dodgers will combined. So it's like if it did happen to be A's Marlins or whatever, they would be paying their players less to play in a World Series than the Dodgers paid for 1 year to lose and not make it that far. So I mean, money doesn't buy you wins, but money buys you wins. Let's be real here. The MLB is bought by the teams that have the most money. So it's like you always see the Dodgers and the Yankees. Sometimes the Cubs. It depends on how they're feeling.
Boston as well, usually.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like come on now. If that happens, does anybody really care? Does anybody really give them credit for making this far? It's just like I don't know. I don't think the Marlins are a playoff team in a 162 game season, honestly. So that's tough. But what are you gonna do, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm in agreement with you on that. And then last thought here on baseball for me. Before the season started, we had a preview podcast with our friend Josh, and the two teams that I picked that I thought were going to regress a little bit were the A's and the Rays. Those were the two wildcard teams in the AL. And both those teams look maybe like the favorites in the AL. So kind of an L for me there. So I can acknowledge that. But
you can't
funny
predict
thoughts
that.
there.
You literally
You definitely
predict
can't.
that. No, it's like
No way.
you can't even be mad at yourself for that one. It's like I would have told you the same thing. It's like who thought the Rays were going to end up winning the division? Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, give
Tampa
me a
Bay
break.
especially, it really surprised me. I even look at the roster now, or even the Marlins roster, and I'm like, I don't understand how these things add up. The A's, I think the A's have a decent roster, so I can buy a little bit in the A's thoughts there. But yeah, interesting thought there from Scott. Now we're gonna wrap up our podcast. Scott sent me another text to ask Donnie that he could not prepare for. So Donnie always we love keeping Donnie off guard. Scotty G does. So thoughts here, Donnie. I know like what are you thinking right now? What do you think Scotty G is asking? Like he's asking funny thoughts in the forward. Do you have any preview thoughts before I ask you this?
It is sports related. That's the only question I have.
Okay, it is sports related. Yes.
Okay, so you asked me like ultimate frisbee. What's going on here?
Ooh, I wish almost. I kind of do want to get your thoughts on Ultimate Frisbee, but he actually wants to pay a little bit of respect to you, Donnie, here. He says, thoughts on the end of the Henrik Lundqvist era in New York, and if you think he'll sign elsewhere. I know you talked a little bit about Lundqvist there, and he also wants to hear your all-time favorite Henrik Lundqvist moment with the Rangers.
Well, first off, I don't think anybody really was prepared for the day. You don't prepare for the time when I don't remember a Rangers team without Henrik Lundqvist on it. I'm not that old. Henrik has been there for 15 years. He's been the only mainstay over the last 15 years. Obviously, players don't play that long for a certain team, but I don't know. There's a lot of respect that you have to give a man that has given his entire career to not win anything, but he wanted to stay so badly that he basically forced his way into the rebuild plans, and then finally they're kind of getting out of it, and he's a little bit over the hill. So it makes sense. It's a business. We have to remember that sports are business first and foremost. It's very upsetting to see Henrik Lundqvist leave, especially if he does sign somewhere else, which I think he will. Hopefully it's not in the Metro. If he ends up on the Capitals, I will be very, very upset. But yeah, I think people don't pay enough respect or really just, relish their time with a legend like that. It's like, I think a lot of Penguins fans felt the same way about Marc-Andre Fleury. He was there for so long. He was their mainstay for so long, and then he left, and people were like, oh, this is how it feels. And now, the Penguins are kind of not so good goaltending-wise. But yeah, with the Rangers, it's like, I don't think fans give him enough credit for what he did, and I think a lot of fans will remember him for the last couple years when they've been rebuilding rather than all he did to carry them to a Stanley Cup, for example, conference finals, all that. Hank was the main reason as to why they had so much success, and Hank was the reason to why we all got to watch so many good games. And I don't know. It's upsetting to see a guy like Hank get bought out by a team that he had spent so much time on, and I spent so many years with, built his family around. It's like he was saying, it's not a goodbye. It's just I'll see you later. We'll be back. Obviously, when he gets his jersey retired and everything, which should happen whenever he decides to retire from the NHL. I don't know. It's a very upsetting thought to see a guy like that leave. I think it would be similar to you if you had lost, like if Patrick Kane decided to leave or something like that, or they traded Kane, or they traded Taves, or even Crawford. It's guys that you have an emotional attachment around. Like Hank has been such a consistent, just star of a guy, very, very talented, and he's a good person too. I'll obviously never remember. He has made some wacky saves over his career. It's like obviously the paddle save that everybody remembers, him diving across and making a paddle save in the playoffs, or just like, just one of the most ridiculous saves against the Bruins of all time. I think that was like early 2010s, maybe 2011, 2012, where he made like the most incredible glove save of all time. I'll definitely post these links to these videos on our Twitter, so you can see them. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's very bittersweet. We all knew it was coming. He had been rumored to be bought out last year too. Didn't happen. Really glad it didn't happen. My only concern, my only wish is that he got his farewell tour. He got to go around and play some games in some of his favorite arenas with the Rangers. Obviously, COVID kind of cut it short, and then the playoff run was short lived. I don't know. You have to sit there and really think about a guy like that. That's the guy you want on your team, regardless of if people will give him the credit for it. Obviously, there are Rangers fans that hate him. Don't know why. Couldn't tell you. But I don't know. It stinks. It's gonna be very, very tough seeing a Rangers team without him, considering I don't remember a Rangers team without him, period, in my entire life. So
Yeah, good thoughts there from Donnie. Donnie, a huge Hank fan, obviously, as so many Ranger fans are, but really good analysis there. And yeah, I can definitely attest. It would be really weird to see a guy like Patrick Kane or Jonathan Toews, two guys that I've seen my entire life on the Blackhawks, on a different team. So I can definitely feel what Donnie is thinking as it relates to that. For me, I'll give you one Hank moment in their playoff run in 2014. I think it was the game when Marty St. Louis scored the overtime goal against Montreal. I just remember there was a clip where they were showing Hank like celebrating after that goal went in. And he was just like so excited to have won that game. That was a really good playoff run for the Rangers. So that's probably my top Hank moment. But yeah, really, really good thoughts. Really good podcast there. Good question there from Scotty G to wrap it up on Hank. Getting some thoughts there from Donnie. But yeah, Donnie, I'll let you wrap things up here as we wrap up the 35th podcast that we've had. That's pretty good, no?
yeah, I mean, we're rocking it here. I think we get better almost every week, so that's what you're looking for, constant growth. But yeah, I really appreciate everybody that listens. Obviously Scotty G with the 17 questions at the end. He really does it for us every week. You have to give him credit for always having some new things to talk about. I was hoping that it was gonna be ultimate frisbee question, but maybe we'll get it next week, something like that. Thank you all for listening. Again, if you have questions, leave them to us. Roth Podcast, Sheck West, you know the drill. I already said it. Just get in here. We're ready for you. But yeah, I really appreciate everybody who listened, and we will talk to you again next week.
Peace, everybody.
The puck in and the change starts. He stays and knocks the puck down. Here's Pat Maroon heading for front of the net. McKenna one-timer scores! Blake Coleman came on for Volkov. A turnover in the neutral zone, and Tampa has a 2-0 lead.